Hey guys, I wanted to create this video to talk about a device that I don't think ever got enough credit for all the innovations it brought to the table. The Lumia 920. For those of you who don't know much about the 920, it was Nokia's flagship back in 2012 and the first device from Nokia to be running on Windows Phone 8. Nokia really needed to step up its game in order to compete with the Galaxy S line as well as the iPhone of the time. It was also their first serious effort into the US consumer phone market. Back then, Nokia used to spend more on their research and development for their phones than all of their competitors, and this was pretty much what they could come up with at the time. So what kind of innovations did the Lumia 920 pack? This is what I'm here to talk about. So let me start with the display of the 920. This was one of the first devices to be running on a 60 Hz refresh rate, and Nokia at the time called it Pure Motion HD+. Back then, this was quite revolutionary, and if you've ever used a 920, you'd know how smooth it was to navigate through its UI. It was also helped by the fact that Windows Phone 8 was really smooth on any sort of hardware it ran on. This was something that Microsoft worked really hard on to make sure that Windows Phone always ran as smoothly as possible. And Pure Motion HD Plus was pretty much the cherry on top of such an amazing, buttery smooth experience. The other incredible thing about this display is that it was the first device you could actually use while wearing gloves. Now, some devices before it could do the same thing, but this was the first to incorporate this feature into a capacitive touchscreen. This was in a time when you had to use your nose if you were in a cold climate and wearing a lot of things on your hands. Nokia called this technology Super Sensitive Touch, and you could enable or disable it from the menu. The other big aspect about this device is that it was one of the first modern devices to support wireless charging. I still remember all the publications calling this a gimmick, and now look at them complaining about any phone that doesn't have this feature in 2020. May I remind you that this phone came out in 2012? I was an early adopter of this technology, and I genuinely believed it improved my user experience so much, especially at night when you want to charge the device and you didn't have to worry about trying to find the cable. So I had two wireless charging stands around the house, one next to my bedside table and one on my office desk. I believe the first iPhone that carried this feature was the iPhone X back in 2017, 5 years after the Lumia had it. If you're enjoying my content so far, be a superstar and hit that subscribe button. It would really mean a lot to me. And of course, it can't be a Nokia without it having amazing camera innovations. The sensor wasn't very special. It was an 8.7 megapixel camera, but what was really special about it is that it was the first phone to have optical image stabilization built into the sensor. What this did is that it enabled it to capture impressive low light images. It could keep the shutter speed open for much longer than its competitors, which meant that it would gather more light. So the low light images were absolutely stunning for the time. What also helped is that it had an f2.0 aperture, and it was the first device to carry this large aperture at the time. The other big benefit was obviously in video recording. You might not remember this, but we were so used to having shaky cam video, and that was pretty much the norm back in the day. So showing people how stable the video recording is on the 920 absolutely blew everyone's mind away. So this is a video sample captured on the Lumia 920. And I think it's a great test to see how well the camera stabilization works when it's being held with just one hand, and as well as testing the audio quality. What do you guys think about the stabilization? These days, a lot of phones depend on software for stabilization, but back then, software stabilization was really bad. Obviously, flagships these days make full use of optical image stabilization and software stabilization to get the best of both worlds. Nokia was also innovating when it comes to the audio captured from the microphones when you're recording video. And while this device wasn't the first device from Nokia to carry rich recording, it was the first modern smartphone to do so. What this could do is that whenever you're in a concert trying to record audio, you'll hear crystal clear audio, as opposed to the competition, where the sound would just pretty much be a whoosh. It was so impressive that if you were to record a plane taking off, you could still hear the audio very clearly. The competition only managed to keep up with this feature about 4 years later. The other underappreciated feature on this device was its build quality and materials used. The 920 was made out of polycarbonate plastic, and for the metal plates, Nokia used zirconium, which was scratch resistant. The benefit of the first material is that it never blocks signal, so you could hold it anywhere you want and it would still have signal and support wireless charging. The color was also built into the material, so even if you were to scratch the surface, it would always keep its color. And the material is super durable, so I used this phone for about a year without having a case on it, and I had zero worries about breaking the screen. So based on everything I've just told you, you'd think this would be the best-selling phone in the history of phones, right? But unfortunately, there were drawbacks. The first complaint from a lot of tech reviewers was that it was heavy, which in my opinion is quite ridiculous. I mean, they were complaining about strained wrists, even though this phone weighs only around 180 grams. The funny thing is, I don't see them complaining about the new iPhone, especially the Pro Max, Ultra, whatever, which weighs around 220 grams. But yeah, this is the phone they couldn't carry around because it was heavy. Such a stupid complaint. The second biggest complaint was that it was running on Windows Phone, which meant that it didn't have as many applications as Android and iOS. This complaint was valid at the time, however the gap wasn't as big as they made you feel it was. And naturally, if more people adopted Windows Phone, this gap would have been narrower and narrower, until it becomes invalid. The third biggest complaint was about the design, the fact that it was made out of plastic as opposed to aluminum, and the fact that it had big bezels on the front. I mean, for the first point, it made it super durable, and in my opinion, it gave it such a big differentiating factor. I think the fact that it has polycarbonate plastic is a part of its charm. And it's not like the plastic was creaking or anything. The device felt super solid to carry around. It also helps that you didn't have to put it in a phone case in order to enjoy its design. As for the big bezels, I mean, they were big, but they weren't that much bigger than the competition. And they were about the same size as the iPhone's bezels. Anyways, to sum up what I was saying, this device was a total game changer that unfortunately didn't manage to sell that well. Yeah, I'm still pretty much bitter about this fact, because it was such a great device that never got the recognition that it deserves. It showcased some of Nokia's best innovations that are still being talked about in the modern smartphones today. Things that we take for granted, like optical image stabilization and wireless charging. Unfortunately, it is a shame that we never managed to see a lot of predecessors to such an amazing smartphone. Anyways, that's it from me. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please share, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.